This week on Wookie Drives, I finally get to drive a fun Hyundai. Specifically, this 2013 Hyundai Veloster Turbo.
Pontiac, Montana SV6. Mazda 5. Mazda 5. Mazda 5. Remodeled. Dodge.
In the 111 episodes of Wookie Drives, this is just the third car from the Hyundai brand that I have covered. The others being a 2020 rental Accent and a 2018 Santa Fe Sport from earlier this year. As much as I've talked about Hyundai's and Kia's renaissance of the 2010s, I've yet to drive one of their fun performance cars. Well, time to change that. A look at the funky, cheap hatch that Hyundai sold for a decade, the Veloster. Some love it, some hate it, and most could be argued are quite indifferent to it. It was cheap and had plenty of mods available, but I would argue that the outgoing Hyundai Veloster N would be truly worthy of that hot hatch badge. No, for the most part, I would argue that the Veloster represents a genre of cars that were very popular in the late 80s and early 90s, but were few and far between as we entered the 2020s. I'm talking about sport compacts. Yeah, you could argue that you could lump hot hatches and rally-inspired cars like the WRX in here, but to me a sport compact would be a fun budget offering that may or may not actually have produced any sort of performance creds, but often would be the cheapest and easiest way for a young car enthusiast to get into cars, or specifically, that particular brand. And that's what the Veloster was. It was small, based on the pedestrian subcompact Accent's chassis. It was weird with its famous asymmetrical door setup with the large driver's side and tiny rear door on the passenger side. It was cheap with it being $17,600 on its base 1.6 form and the automatic turbos such as this one starting off at $23,100. And for those wondering, that's $23,195 and $30,444 in 2023 money. When the first generation Veloster chassis code FS would launch for the 2012 model year, Hyundai was at the height of their renaissance with their fluidic sculpture design language that had people doubling back and going, wait, that's a Hyundai Sonata? I was graduating high school at this time, and seeing one of those Sonatas for the first time while gathering shopping carts at Hannaford I worked at was truly the moment when my opinion of the brand changed. At the time, Hyundai and Kia were brands that I thought they were for people who couldn't afford not only Toyotas and Hondas, but American offerings such as Chevys and Fords. But no, here was a Hyundai of all brands putting out a dad sedan that looked like it was straight from an auto show. The Veloster would replace the Tiburon, a fine little sport compact coupe that looked kinda goofy, but that was the charm of it. And then the name, Veloster. All this time I thought the name was a play on the Velociraptor, everyone's favorite dinos from the Jurassic Park franchise, but no, it's actually a combination of the words velocity and roadster. Velocity for speed and roadster because, I don't know, ask Paul for marketing, I guess. But it's certainly a name that stood out and you wouldn't mistake it for any other car. You had two engines available, both variants of the 1.6-liter Gamma i4. Most Veloster models got the 1.6-liter GDI that produced 138 horsepower and 123 foot-pounds of torque. But turbo models, such as this 2013 model, slapped a turbo on it to turn it into the 1.6-liter T-GDI that produced a respectable 201 horsepower and 195 foot-pounds of torque. Power is then sent to either a 6-speed manual or a 6-speed auto with Shiftronics, so you could pretend you're in a sports car. And power is then directed to the front wheels because, yeah, it's based on the Accent. To further differentiate the turbo from the lesser Veloster, Hyundai would give it a whole new front fascia that gives it a big black grille to help with cooling, while lesser models got the cluttered nose straight from the period Accent. Other features the turbo got over lesser models included the LED lights, twin exhausts that exit at the center, side skirts, push-button start, sat-nav, and a backup camera because those weren't state-mandated equipment yet. In person, the turbo model looks like a handsome little hatch. As I mentioned before, base Velosters look a little frumpy with their Accent-derived noses, but the turbo model has a handsome elegance to it. And where the black grille is paired with the contrasting colors such as this white, it really brings the whole package together. Like a little Star Wars stormtrooper helmet driving around. But while it looks neat, When you get to the asymmetrical doors, it kind of all falls apart when you start poking around. Normally, with small sporty hatches, you don't really notice any shortcomings past the front seats because everything's put together like a normal car. Rear seats are easy to get to, either you got normal doors or the front seats fold forward and you access it like a normal coupe. But no, not the Veloster. You have asymmetrical doors because we're trying to be cute and different. The passenger side gets a normal sized front door and the little half door to help with egress into the back, like a Saturn Ion coupe. But while that door opens backwards on the Ion to greatly help with egress, it opens like a normal rear door like on any other normal car, so when you couple it with the angle of the rear door opening and it just being short, it's really tight getting in and out. So it's incredibly inconvenient trying to put, well, anybody in the back. Once back there, I had decent legroom, but I could not sit up in the back of the Veloster. Keep in mind, I'm 6'3". The extreme rake of the roofline just kills any sort of headroom. And don't let the driver's side door off either. To make up for not having the half door on that side, the driver's door is extremely long, like obnoxiously long. Which becomes a problem if you're in a parking lot and you're trying not to door ding people on a constant basis, because that door will swing into anything into the next parking spot without hesitation. And the cargo area is okay. You have an alright amount of cargo space, but you have an extremely small hatch opening, so you can't exactly fit anything really large back there. And that small hatch opening creates another issue: rearward visibility. It's almost non-existent. And that's with the owner removing the rear headrests, because with them installed, what little visibility you had in your rearview mirror is flat out killed. Thank God turbo models have a rearview camera standard. The only other thing that really stood out for weirdness in the 2013 Veloster are these giant door handles that stick up like, I don't know, shoulder blades? They just seem like they're there for quirkiness sake because the door cards do have traditional pocket handles. The rest of the interior is fine. For a cheap car of the early 2010s, the materials feel remarkably nice and well put together for the price point. This was far outclassing Chrysler and many GM products at the time. And this is one of Hyundai's cheapest offerings. This is why people turned to Hyundai at the time, because, this is really well put together on the inside for being so cheap. Despite this car's age, everything just feels like it's put together well, which is something I wouldn't say about many 10-year-old American cars. On the road, the 2013 Hyundai Veloster Turbo is fine. Just fine. Unfortunately, it's not as sporty as I would have hoped. The aftermarket intake makes a lot of cool whooshing noises, and the blow-off valve really helps awaken the inner child, but everything's just meh. I am whelmed. It's kind of disappointing because I was kind of hoping for more, but Steering is too heavy. They made it artificially heavy because race cars have heavy steering, but it doesn't actually have any of the meaningful connection to the road beneath you. It doesn't help that the suspension feels slightly too stiff, not just in kicking you in the kidneys every time you hit a pothole still, but there's little to no body roll, so when you put that heavy steer on top of no body roll, you kind of just end up feeling disconnected somewhat from the experience. If there was just a smidge of body roll, then maybe you could have some sort of connection on the road as you steered into a corner, but in the end, I'm just feeling meh on the whole experience. It's not slow, but it doesn't feel brisk or light on its feet. It just doesn't provide a fizzy feeling. Just one big meh experience for the Roland Stormtrooper helmet. Anyways, this particular 2013 Hyundai Veloster Turbo has around 65,000 miles, and boy oh boy, it has some miles. In the 10 years of this car's life, it has been in 4 accidents. The original owner was a college student in Las Vegas, and she originally wrecked it in her college parking garage while texting and driving and rear-ending the car in front of her. The second owner was a young man in Southern California, and he thought he had himself a race car. He installed those obnoxious spiky lug nuts on it, and on, 4 of the 5 studs on each wheel so he could keep his wheel locks, because Southern California. And then he installed this obnoxious samurai sword shifter because, for some reason, yeah, it was so obnoxious that the current owner of Nevada said that it actually made it kind of hard for you to hit the start-stop switch on the center stack. Anyways, back to that second owner, he really did think this thing was a race car, and he himself had 2 accidents with it. One was a simple sideswipe, but the second he actually backed it into a concrete barrier on the highway at speed and he totaled it. It was then purchased by a dealer at auction who repaired it, and they would sell it to Nevada 4 years ago for $6,000. Keep in mind that this car originally stickered for around $34,000 when that original owner bought it. Not so good in terms of resale value, but for a young college student like Nevada at the time, this would become the perfect cheap car for him. And it has had its fourth accident at the beginning of the year when the wife was involved in a fender bender on her way to work, which required a whole new right front suspension and wheel, which explains why the one off-colored wheel. Now, even though this car doesn't have the infamous Hyundai Theta engine with its magically wiping crank bearings, this Veloster and its Gamma engine have had 4 engine management recalls in its lifetime. If owners ignore these recalls, it would lead to these engines failing at around 40,000 miles like clockwork. Just a reminder, if your car has any sort of engine or drivetrain recall, get it taken care of. These are free repairs from the manufacturer for you to get it done. In the case of recalls like these, this could lead to massive failure that you, the owner, are responsible for repairing because you ignored them, not the manufacturer. Also, he's recently gotten another recall in the mail concerning the backup sensor circuits potentially causing an electrical fire, which is just... what the F, Hyundai? So yeah, engine management recalls and a backup sensor recall are the 2 major ones you gotta look out for with these first generation Velosters. In conclusion, the first generation Hyundai Veloster is a fine, cheap, small car for young drivers looking for their first car or for something to bomb around in at college. As much as I hate to say it, they aren't really performance cars, as much as their looks and turbo badges try to convince you otherwise. With the second generation, Hyundai would finally give the Veloster a proper hot hatch variant with the N. But the first gen instead makes for a good base for a young wrenching enthusiast to start with. In a sense, I would compare the Veloster to what the original Honda CRX was doing in the late 80s. Sportyish looks on a small car based on a more pedestrian sedan bones, but at a low price that would entice any young person looking for something good on gas and offer a hint of style. Like the CRX before it, the Veloster became a popular choice for young people for all these reasons. And the second generation Veloster improves on everything I complained about here with the first. Hyundai would hire Albert Biermann away from BMW and oversee a shift in Hyundai suspension tuning with models released in the second half of the 2010s, which was something Hyundai was struggling with their early Renaissance models like this Veloster. Anyways, 2013 Hyundai Veloster Turbo, a small cheap car that comes with a hint of compromise. But despite this, I would recommend one as a good first or second car for a young person. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you once again for watching another episode of Wookie Drives. Huge shout out to Nevada and April for letting me drive their quirky little Korean hatch for this video. If you have a car or truck you'd like to see on the show and happen to be in the Charlotte or Mooresville, North Carolina area, email me at wookiedrives@gmail.com with a submission of your car. That's right, submit your car to wookiedrives@gmail.com. That's wookiedrives@gmail.com. Don't forget to give the video a like, drop a comment with some feedback. Any sort of interaction with this video really helps small channels like mine grow in the algorithm. Share with all your Hyundai Veloster friends, and finally don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell for more Wookie Drives like these. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.
Trust us, it's fast. The Veloster Turbo from Hyundai.